And hold on. Okay, now we're recording. All right, let's go ahead and share our screen. I hope that you had a good weekend, 4th of July holiday. Maybe you spent some time with your family or just relaxing yourself.
I did celebrate it, but I
You
had to relax it.
did.
Nobody's free until everybody is free.
That is right. That is right. There is a not a sermon, but a speech. I think it's Frederick Douglass that says, "What,
Yeah,
yeah, what to the slave is the 4th of July," and it even rings real true for us today, right? All right, everybody. So remember, we started our week not on Monday but on Tuesday. Yesterday was Tuesday. Yeah, yesterday was Tuesday. So we're starting this week, the week of the 6th, July 6th. We are transitioning a little bit. I left my tablet downstairs, but we are transitioning this week out of Susan White's book, and now we're going into Melva Costin's book that talks about African American worship. So make sure that you make that transition and make sure that you have that. Well, you should have had it already. And this is where this discussion and lesson is going to come from today and throughout the rest of the semester will be in Costin's book. Do you know? I'm gonna see if I can find the right video. I met Dr. Costin. She was a professor at ITC, the seminary that I went to, but I met her years before that, and I didn't really know who she was, and I could just really kick myself for being ignorant. And I met her. She also went to my undergrad. She went to Johnson C. Smith University. And there was a function or something that we had years ago. This might have been maybe about 10 years ago. And I met her. We were sitting at a table and she wrote her number down for me to stay in contact with her because I told her I was going to seminary and I did not stay in contact with her. And I didn't really know who she was, right, y'all? And then when I got to seminary, and then I'm like, wait a minute, I'm reading a book by this lady. So I felt real dumb, y'all. So so sometimes we have these divine meetings. We got to take advantage of all of those divine meetings that we have in our lives. So I'm real excited about getting into her book. Anyway, in week 6, your discussion question is going to talk about our chat today in chapter 1 of Costin's book. So you're going to talk about the concept of diversity in African American worship and why this is so important. So you're going to get your nuggets from our discussion today. It is real important to read chapter 1, which we're going to discuss, and that will help you with your assignment. All right. Also, you have quiz 2 that is coming up this week that is posted right here, and it will be due on Sunday night. And so quiz 2 will talk about the chapter on burials, marriages, and there's one more. And I think I put it in the trash. The burials, marriages, and and inclusive language. Okay, so make sure that you are, I think you'll do really well on that quiz. We're going to talk about African American worship today. Here's your PowerPoint. And then also, here is a study guide that I wanted to pass on to you, just so that you can look over it. But this is a study guide, and you'll notice it has some words up there at the top, and you're like, huh, what is that? Because this was from a seminary class that I took. But I wanted to just share just this worship study guide with you. You don't have to do anything with it, but it's just really cool to look at some of the things that we did in a seminary class. And this kind of outlines Melva Costin's book. All right, everybody. So I'm going to go back to our lesson. Give me 1 second and I'm going to transition and bring up our PowerPoint. All right, everybody, let me know when you can see it. It should say African Theology of African American Worship. Let me know if y'all can see my PowerPoint.
No, I can't see it.
Not yet. Uh-oh.
We can see it.
I can see it.
Okay. Everybody can see it, said Ruben?
I see it.
All right. All right. Okay.
Yes.
Super. All right, everybody. So we are in chapter 1 of Dr. Melba Costin's book, and let's jump right into it. So we are going to talk about the kind of the foundation of African American worship. So let's go back a little bit. We talked about overall in Susan White's book, we talked about the foundation of Christian worship. But now we're focusing a little bit more on us African Americans and the foundation of African American worship and where that comes from. What is it? And so over the next few weeks before we end this course, you'll see a little bit more why the Black church does the things that it has done. All right, so let's jump into this discussion. And y'all know you can stop me at any time. African American worship is very rich. So regardless, and you know, just like I know, there are many denominations. But if you study those, if you look at those, even what's represented here in our class, right? I'm Methodist and we have some people who are Baptist and some who might be non-denominational, whatever it is. Or even if you don't go, you may have visited some, right? And we can probably say, safely say that there are some similarities from church to church, no matter what the denomination is, even though all of them don't do the same thing. There are many similarities. Okay, the worship experience is very rich. But one of the key things that we can say of all of them is that the reason why they gather is to worship God, is to thank God, to gather together as a collective group to give praise to the Most High God. However, if you don't get anything from this second half of this course, I want you to remember this key thing. And many of you know where I always go back to when you've had me for previous classes. African American worship is deeply rooted in Africa. Okay, and so that's what we're going to explore in Dr. Costin's book. Everything, just about everything, just about, I said just about, because some things are European. Just about everything that you will see in a Black church, like I said, some things are European brought in, have their roots in African practices. And so let's talk about how Africans looked at the world. So for example, African societies lived in a very religious universe. Everything was sacred. So, and when we talk about African society, so we're thinking, let's think all the way back before our ancestors arrived here in America or South America or the Caribbean. Okay, so these African societies believed that everything was religious. The animals were religious or sacred.
Like animism?
Well, let's not, well, they want to make sure that everything was given its special place in the universe. So not necessarily worshiping the animal, but that animal was special or was sacred and shouldn't be treated just any kind of way. You know, the tree was special. The tree was sacred because God designed or grew the tree. The seed from the tree was sacred. You know, the people were sacred. So this is what we call a holistic way of living. And let me just pause right there and open this up for discussion. And I know we're a long way from there, right? We're in 2021, soon to be 2022. And when we think about Christian worship, and then now we're into this section of African American worship, tell me, y'all, what do you think? Do you see that holistic point of view anymore? And when I say holistic, everything is sacred. Everything is an act of God. What you think?
I don't think as much as it was then.
I don't think so.
Uh,
Good.
because, I mean, just look at our life in society today. Nothing, human life is not even sacred anymore.
Nope.
If we're looking at it from that perspective now. Mm-mm.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'll have to take the position that we don't look at everything now as being an act of God, but there are occasions where God allows things to happen. He didn't intervene in what happened.
Okay, good. Good way to see that.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Yeah, like we can see, I'm gonna just say, oh, you've been watching the news, and what is it in Florida where the apartment complex, the condominium fell down, and they had found, I was reading an article this morning, they found a little girl, well, she was 15, in the rubble, and they were able to rescue that young lady. And so we would see that, right? Like, oh my goodness, look at how God spared her life.
Wow. After all this time?
Now, I don't know what day they found her. I don't know what day they found her, but when I was reading the article, I want to say, Irene, that it was before they had to do the demolition.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing, and I had to back up in the reading, like, Lord,
Yeah, well,
that's a miracle.
that reminds me of what happened in Mexico probably about 30 years ago. And there was an earthquake and a nursery collapsed. And it was days later they found all the babies alive.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Wow.
That is a miracle.
Sure is.
Mm.
So look, in the African society worldview, okay, so in African worldview, every act is sacred. Every person is sacred. I'm eating a croissant over here, right? The food is sacred. The animals are sacred. Everything happened for a reason. So if there was a storm one day, look, we get a storm, it's supposed to be a hurricane, what is it, Elsa or something running through here. We're just like, whatever. If it comes, it comes. If not, I want my son, right? That's just how we are. But the African worldview would view that storm as something special, some type of act. There's a reason behind it, and it needs to be revered. Okay. All right, let's jump on down. Let me know if you see my next slide. It says the struggle for survival.
Yes.
Okay. So Africans who came over to, the Americas, we call African American, worship. When we talk about this thing called worship, it was a tool for them. And when I say it was a tool for survival. So they were struggling to survive in these in this European way of living on these plantations. And so they found that if they were able to worship, they were able to survive. So I got a question for you over here on the left bottom. Imagine being an alien in a strange land. How would you feel? And then what would you lean on for support? Let's talk about that. Imagine being an alien in a strange country, continent. How would you feel and what would you lean on for support?
I'll be reading my Bible.
Good. Yeah. And guess what? Even if you were taken and they stripped everything from you, if you didn't have your actual Bible, but you had those scriptures in your heart.
In your heart. That's right.
Right. Good. Anybody else? What would you lean on for support?
I lean on my faith. I trust in God. That's all I have. If that's
Yeah. Did you hear what Irene said? She said, that's all I would have. They took my clothes, they took my family, They took my house. They took my way of living, but you can never take my faith. And that was all they had. And that's what we found that the Africans, our African ancestors, should I say, used to survive. And that's what came into that is what really birthed Black worship, Black church worship, should I say. And so the whole point of worship, when they got together, it became, a sigh of relief. This is a place where we can come and we can lean on each other. We can lean on our faith when we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Okay. So I want you to look at the little picture of the little house. It says Praise House. Now, this is a real updated Praise House. This is not from slavery time, because you see they got electricity in their Praise House. But the slave ancestors gathered in secrecy in the beginning because they were scared that if the plantation owners found out that they were worshiping, what do you think what would happen?
Crack the whip time.
Right. They would be punished. And so there's a thing that we have to bring up here with worship, African American worship, that is very powerful. And so why would the slave masters be scared of them going into this praise house? Because they know that they would be getting stronger. So that's why that they had to do their worship in secrecy. And these, okay, so anyway, we're going to learn more about the praise house in some next chapters, but I wanted you to see it's small, very small. And this is like, let's say, even if you get a chance, and if maybe some of people are from that area, South Carolina still has some, these praise houses, they were some of them, they were able to rehabilitate and kind of keep them up. But this is one, so you just get the idea how small it was, and that they would kind of gather in these little houses to worship together. All right, so now let's talk about and be real specific about Africa, and African American worship. Although African Americans, we share a lot of things, we may share some common worship practices, we would be remiss to say that all Black churches are the same. And that is not true, is it?
No.
No.
We're not.
No.
No. So before we go to the other side of this slide, how can they be different? Now, we're talking about Black worship. Let's focus about that, Black church worship. How can they be different?
Well, I look at the church that I grew up in. It was very conservative.
Different regions and countries.
Oh, okay. Hold on, Ms. Smith. We're going to come right back to you. Ruben, go ahead.
Well, the church that I grew up in was very conservative, especially when it came to instrumentation. For example, wasn't no way no drums was coming up in there. No horns were going to come up in there. It was very quiet congregation, kind of laid back. Whereas the church I go to now, we have all types of instrumentation. People are more demonstrative. Somebody might jump up and do a holy dance when the spirit hit them. So yeah, we have those types of differences.
Those types of things. Anybody? Oh, Ms. Smith, go ahead, jump in there.
Different regions and countries, how they worship different from each other.
That's true. That's true. Different regions might have a different flavor to their worship. Good. Anybody else? We're gonna
Well, I
look
can
at
say that when my church, I grew up in the Methodist church all my life until I got married. And it was what is now the United Methodist Church. And it was a very quiet worship. We went in, we had worship, and kind of like the man in the video. You know what time you were going in, and you did service, and you knew when you were coming out.
Right.
And we sang hymns and our creeds and all of that, affirmations. And we didn't have what Reuben is describing now that goes on in our church. That did not go on in my church. But we were so young and silly. We like, and we used to go to what was called in the afternoon, Sunday afternoon. And the reason we went is foolish, but we went Holiness Church because it was so different, and we wanted to see the people shout. So my sisters and brothers, my sister and brother, and us, and me, rather, all went to the Holiness Church sometimes on Sunday afternoon. First, what we thought was funny, but now we understand, But it was so different, So we wanted to go. We went to see what was happening at that church.
That's a good point. So you talked about the Methodist Church, you talked about the Holiness Church, Baptist Church, same African American people. However, the worship practices were not all the same.
Right.
Good. So let's go over here to the right-hand side. Many liturgical practices, and then when we say liturgical, think of that word liturgy, what you do, what you perform in the worship experience. Many of these practices go back to Africa. The African worldview believes these things. They believe that God created the world, not a person. That the people, the humans, are part of the creation. They believe in this sacred cosmos, this sacred deity, this sacred space. Okay. They believe in community and community staying together, solidarity. They believe in a holistic relationship with God. And when we say holistic, it's everything. Their mind, their body, their soul, their money, their house, the dog, the cat, everything. I kind of think of like a pie, and you cut a piece of the pie out, but no, their whole pie is their relationship with the Creator God. And they believe there was a rhythm to life. There was this cosmic rhythm to life, this godly rhythm, that things happen because of the things that the Creator was deeming in the world. So there was this cosmic rhythm that would happen. Nothing was happenstance. Nothing was it just fell out the sky and it just happened. Everything was happening for a reason. Okay, now let's discuss. There has been a persistent negative attitude toward African primal religions. Why is that? Why do you think there's always been
colonialism / imperialism, and how Africa is the most robbed continent, especially to this day, and all the negative portrayals of it?
Okay. All right, thank you. So I heard colonialism. This issue of European countries taking over African countries and the way that they were living prior to them coming, the African missionaries or whoever was trying to settle there, they were like, that's wrong. And so it's real interesting as we study, and many of you have had this in the church history course. It's like, okay, well, how are you going to come into somebody's house and tell them that something is wrong? And they've been doing it for a long time. It's been working for them. Anybody else jump in there? There's been a persistent negative attitude towards like African religion. And when I say the primal religion, what they were doing before the white people came. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think some of it may have to do with the influence of Catholicism in some of it. I think because to me, I'm not trying to put Catholicism down, but to me, it's a very different experience than the Protestant experience or anything that is not Catholic. So we have these rituals that people will go through that didn't fit that mold of what they were used to, so they looked down on it because they did not understand. They were not accustomed to it, and they didn't understand it.
Okay. So think, Ruben, I want you to even think back even before Catholicism. Before then, like as these European folks were coming and snatching us, snatching our ancestors, putting them on a boat and sending them to North America, South America, the Caribbean.
Central America.
Central America, that's right. We down there too, right? What do you think, like, why was it that what they were doing before they got on the boat was considered negative?
We were immune to the diseases from the quote unquote old world. We did not know the land of the quote unquote new world. They branded us and treated us as cargoes because we were property.
Sure. Okay, I hear somebody else.
I was just gonna say one little simple word.
Go ahead.
Not anything to do with what I mean. Could have just been fear, or the fact that they were out of fear of making sure that they got them under their control. They could not allow them to be free to worship because they didn't understand their worship, so they didn't know what it was going to do, how it may affect them. It could have just been fear.
Right. That's it. When somebody doesn't know, and the Europeans did not understand, did not know African religion. So whatever they were doing, they could have did anything.
Mm-hmm.
So the slaveholder said, nope, that's wrong. Do it like this. And it wasn't necessarily that it was wrong. So as we're going to learn over the next couple of chapters, wasn't that it was wrong, but what our ancestors were so bright to do was like, look, so that we can survive, I'm going to take what I'm doing and I'm going to work it within what you expect me to do so that I can live, so that I can survive. Okay. Yeah, so I'm just stopping here to say, before we go on to the other side of this lesson, is if you don't get anything from this second part of this class, is this. Our African ancestors were doing their own thing. And when I say doing their own thing, they already were practicing religion. They already knew God. Yes. They're like, I already know God. Why are you trying to tell us who he is? But the Europeans, the European was like, no, you got to do it like this. And so the European has continually put into the African that what you're doing is wrong. And you see how that has come down century after century after century after century to say that the African way was wrong and our way is right. Well, no, how about everybody could be right? Because everybody will do something their way. That's all I'm saying. So we don't want to, especially as Black people, when we learn about different African religions, we don't want to turn our nose up and say, ew, what is that? They're doing something nasty. Well, no, because guess what? Our ancestors who gave birth to us many, 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 many years ago, were doing the same thing. Now, it may look differently when they came over on the shores, but they still had that in their hearts. All right, so let's go to the right-hand side of this. Let's see how we're doing. African people in the African religions sought to know God. They wanted to know who God was. They wanted to have relationship with this creator. So for them, at that time, doctrines and creeds weren't important. They wanted relationship. They wanted to know that God knew them and that they knew the creator. And that gave them clarity. They gave them direction. They gave them some certainty when they felt uncertain. And so as we start to get into slavery time, and then we talk about slave preachers and things like that, the African American preacher would tell them what God wanted them to know. And then the people in the congregation, the slaves in the congregation, would hear it and participate in knowing who God is. And they wanted to know God for themselves. They wanted to read if they could read, or they wanted someone to share the information with them if they couldn't read, so that they could know more about the creator. Okay. All right, you all stay right there. Anybody have any questions, comments while I'm switching my screen? That's all right? Okay. Now, I just want you to see, we're going to do a couple of things here. Y'all give me a second and I'm going to pull up this video. I want you to see Dr. Melva Costin. Y'all let me know when you can see this. Okay. Now, Dr. Costin is also a minister. Let me see if they come over. All right. Let me know if you see the video on the screen.
Yes.
Oops. I didn't share my sound. Hold on. Shame on me. Let me do it again, y'all. Sorry. I'm doing something wrong. I'm sorry. There we go. Computer sound. Sorry. Here we go. Wanted to make sure you all could hear it. Just to give you a little bit, we're not going to watch all of this, but I just want you to see a little bit of who our author is. So Dr. Melva Costin, remember I said I met her. She was the wife of James Costin, and she talks a little bit here in this video about her musical life. She's a great musician, and a lot of the books she writes is about Black church.
My fondest memories begin with reminders of music. My mom was a pianist. My dad was a vocalist. He incidentally was a Sunday school missionary in the former Northern Presbyterian Church, which was the one that African Americans belonged to in the South. So Dad led singing all the time, and it seems as if our house was always a practice environment because music happened all day long. At the age of 12, a cousin came from college and he was a tremendous pianist and vocalist. So my mom said, try Melva again, At 6, she wasn't ready, so see what's going on. And the music book, Teaching Little Fingers to Play by John Thompson, was what he brought. And so I started and went all the way through the book. And my cousin said, "May I call your mom for a minute?" So when my mother came back in, he says, "Azalee seems like she's going to do very well. So I'm going to start her in the hymn book today as well," which was in my 11th year. At that time, you could graduate from high school at 11. And with nothing else to do, the piano teacher there just sent me asunder into Bach, Beethoven, and Brahms. And beyond that, my life became a music world. And that's where I am in terms of the church. I have served as choir director in a number of places. The first places were in North Carolina, where I attended the Presbyterian School, Johnson C. Smith University, and I began to be pursued by the churches to be choir director. And even then, I was approaching my senior year in college, and I was only 17 and a half. And so it gave me an opportunity to fill in that time space as I was trying to decide how to merge my newly chosen career as a primary school teacher. So a number of churches.
Okay, so we're going to pause. I wanted you to just see a little bit of who Dr. Costin is. And so you see that this author of our book, I'm going to fast forward a little bit, is highly steeped in the Black church and worship. So you see her area is music.
Yeah, and I invited Jim in a lot because I prepared to face the gathering of that committee. We were put together by a team from the North and the South because we were phasing into becoming one church. And the hymnal was called for at the General Assembly as the first evidence of a merger. I think the traveling and having the church meet us at presbytery gatherings and meeting us at General Assembly, the closer we got to finishing, we met every year at the General Assembly and had a Presbyterian hymnal discussion. And well attended. I mean, the church was excited. I know because of the first time, it was the first time it had been open opportunity for persons to be elected.
Okay, so we're going to pause right here. I just wanted you to see who Dr. Costin is, so you could put a name with the actual face. It's our actual author, and many times, sometimes we can't do that. We're like, who is this writing all these words? And I believe she is still alive. And let's go to, while I'm queuing this up, any questions, any comments so far while I'm queuing up our next video? Okay. All right, so we're going to queue up the next video. And remember, we were talking about worship styles. And we're going to go through a few examples here. And I'm coming right back to you. All right, so here's our first video. Let me make sure I include the sound of a very enthusiastic church. Here's the first one. The commercial.
Perfect. Sitting around the table.
So I want you to even pay attention to movements. We hear this worship is very live. Okay, so you hear a guitar, you hear tambourines, you hear the organ. As we start to talk about the African worldview, and as we get into, I'm gonna take the audio down, but I want you to keep watching as we talk about the African worldview. Our African ancestors moved, they danced, they sang, they praised, they clapped. As we start, I think you all have an assignment on it, so I don't want to talk too much on it. But there is, we're going to talk about the African ring shout. And sometimes if you watch a Black church, somebody may dance, or they may, just have a shout, be overcome by the Spirit. And many times the person or people will actually turn their bodies in a circle. And I say all that to say, how would we know in 2020, 2021, 1970, 1950, how would that person know? Here's a lady right here in the red. How would that person know? How would that Black person know that that is what our African ancestors did? Isn't that awesome?
Genetic memory.
Genetic memory. It's just in us. All right. It's just in us. Okay, so I'm going to switch to another one. Switch my. Okay, so I'm gonna switch over to another style. Hold on, make sure I get the right one here. Hold on, everybody. Now I can't pull it up. Okay, but I think I lost my place. Okay, everybody, I'm sorry. I think I lost my place and my video is gone. My video is gone, but I had a really cool video. Let me see if this one will do it. Where, no, that's not it. Where it was more subdued. And of course, just because I'm trying to pull it up, it doesn't want to come up right now. Okay, I'm going to find it and then I'll post it in our session. Yeah, it's not coming up. All right, I apologize for that. But the other example was a more subdued, it was a Black church and they had beautiful hymns. Maybe I should have searched under hymns. They had beautiful hymns and they, I mean, the women just looked so beautiful in their beautiful hats, and it was more of a subdued service, but it was African American people, and it was just, as you just stop and you just look at the differences among both churches. No, it's not coming up here. I'll find it, y'all, and I'll post it. Okay, but anyway, so I don't want to belabor things. We're at the end of our session. Any questions and comments?
The largest Black churches are in Africa, and Nigerian churches. They worship different than the ones here in America. Like if you examine how they worship, Nigerians, they more like, you just have to see, like, it's more energetic than the one in the States.
Oh yes, very good. Exuberant worship. Hey, thanks, Ms. Smith. That's a good example. Let's do that real quick before we leave out. A friend of mine is from Liberia, And let me see if I can find the church service. She was telling me about how exuberant they are, for example, when they go to bring their offering. And she, you know, she was just talking about how exuberant they are. They just don't, you know, walk and do things. Let me see if I can find it on here. Now I just found anyone. I didn't look at this real quick. Okay, that's a good example. Okay, guys, I'm coming back real quick. Okay, so I just picked up, I hope you all can see this video real quick. This is a church in Liberia. Super. Okay, this is what I talk about. Okay, that's just beautiful, beautiful. And of course, this is very modern, but I'm gonna turn the audio down. But even as we watch that first example of the Baptist church, and then we come back and go across the waters to Liberia, look, and not much has changed, right? This is in us. This is in us.
Yes.
I'm ready to go to that church. Ready to go.
I would enjoy that church.
Woo-hoo! I would be so ready to go. Oh, David had to put me out, but all right. So yeah, you do see some similarities there. So anyway, the African worldview is still present in African American worship today. And we're going to pause right here. You all remember, what do we have this week? Let me go back to our page because you know I'll forget. All right, so everybody, we are in week 6. Can y'all believe it? We're almost done. And remember to do your quiz and your discussion post for this week, okay? Any questions for me?
No.
Okay. So y'all remember, look at your calendars, make sure, because you know I'm changing up the schedule. So I'm going to see you next week, the 14th on Wednesday. I'm going to see you Wednesday the 14th. And that's going to be our last virtual meeting, And then I'll record the sessions for the 21st, and the 28th. I'll record those sessions. Okay? All righty. Okay. Be blessed. Everybody take care.
All right, you too.
Take care. Y'all be safe.